Today we're going to be talking about Vinegar Syndrome, and if you're a film collector or a film enthusiast and you own a couple of these releases, down in the comments I want you to tell me what is your favorite one, your absolute favorite one, because we're going to be looking at some of their more recent stuff, and their catalog goes back 5 or so years, so what is the best movie you think they've released? Hello, I'm Adam Caesar. This is Project Black T-Shirt, the channel where we talk about new release or reissue horror movies, and then at the very end always give you a book recommendation to check out if you like those movies. So I've been posting a little less frequently recently, and that's because I'm on a deadline and I'm trying to finish a book. So as we enter this spooky season, to unwind, I've just been watching a bunch of movies, and it turns out that I've been watching a bunch of Vinegar Syndrome releases. After a long day of work, I'm like, you know, I'm going to throw on a real mind melter of a movie, and we have six of those for you today. These are some deep cut movies. These are movies that I had never seen before. These were all first time watches for me. They're movies that I'd either heard of or hadn't heard of in some cases. We're going to look at 6 movies, real quick little capsule reviews. First, we're going to talk about a movie that actually has 3 names, or at least 3 names. It is The Dead Come Home by James Riffle. It's also known as The House on Tombstone Hill, and because of this wonderful packaging, it's also known as, in the title that I actually kind of knew it as, Dead Dudes in the House. This was a Troma acquisition, and Vinegar Syndrome's done this a few times where they've released Troma movies, or movies that Troma had kind of put out in, like, I mean, like, these are some movies that they were like budget packs and buy one get 5 kind of releases, at least during the DVD era, and then they've kind of given them these loving remasters and gone back in and added extras. The best movie they've done this with, in my opinion, Bloodhook, which I think is wonderful, one of the best releases Vinegar Syndrome's ever done, if not the best release. The Dead Come Home, or Dead Dudes in the House, kind of mashup of a more traditional slasher and then something maybe like Evil Dead, because it is in some ways like a haunted house, possessed house story. This group of young people, I guess, are they supposed to be teenagers, supposed to be college people? We really don't get much of their backstory at all, but a group of young people go to a house to fix it up. One of them has bought this giant house, and the house is kind of the star of The Dead Come Home. It's this amazing, dilapidated mansion that they like clearly just found and like really shot in it. Kids start dying. Kids start coming back possessed and doing some killing of their own. There is the standout kind of makeup in the film is this old woman makeup. She's kind of our slasher, but she's just in this house, and they're trying to figure out the mystery of why this is she a ghost, is she a monster? Old woman is in this house, but it's one of the younger actors. One of the kids actually is playing 2 parts, and they put this makeup prosthetic on him to make him look like an older woman, because there were a lot of stunts and stuff involved in the role, and she's got these kind of like Freddy Krueger like hands and claws. It's a really cool makeup, and she looks really cool. She's kind of creepy. The house itself is really cool and really creepy. The movie, I think it's definitely, if you're a kind of slasher completist, or if you like films like The Evil Dead that have a little bit of humor and a little bit of kind of like gratuitous gore, they're doing a home improvement project. So there's a bunch of kills that are just like, oh, how can we use this saw blade? How can we use this, you know, hammer? How do like there's a lot of just hardware store kills in this movie. And it is a lot of fun. It does move. It does at times feel like a little long. There's so many kills. There's so much like people dying, coming back to life as zombies, getting, you know, axed up again. It's one of those things. It's almost like an embarrassment of riches. It's almost like there's too many kills. It's like, all right, just let's cut this down. Let's move this on. But it's still that's a strange complaint coming from me. But it's well worth checking out if the House on Tombstone Hill, which is probably the best title, has ever caught your eye. Next is House of the Dead. This movie was also known as Alien Zone, which especially if you see the movie, you're like, who the hell named it Alien Zone? But it is very much working in the mold of an Amicus anthology of a kind of, you got a wraparound story about a guy cheating on his wife, and he has to hole up in a funeral home, and he's meeting this funeral director, and he's kind of spooky, creepy. The stories are of varying quality. What's interesting about this film, it is a regional horror film. It is filmed in and around Oklahoma. There's some interesting period location shooting in it. It is directed by Sharon Miller. She does do a audio interview. It's not I don't think it's on camera. I think they just got on the phone with her and recorded this audio. Very cool. Very kind of brass tacks. You know, I did this movie, 30 years ago, and we're going to talk about it now and how I got it made. Very interesting. One of these segments, there's a segment with a businessman, and he's kind of kidnapped and tortured for a reason that he doesn't understand. That sequence alone is kind of worth checking out the movie. The rest of them are varying quality, and you kind of there's one extra long one that you're like, this doesn't even fit in this movie. But again, it's got a kind of cool Tales from the Crypt, Vault of Horror feel to it, but in Oklahoma. House of the Dead, the bafflingly retitled Alien Zone, worth checking out if you like anthology films, and especially if you like those British anthology films and want to kind of see a dime store American version of that. Bloodsuckers from Outer Space. Maybe not a more aptly titled film that we're going to be talking about, because it is indeed about a kind of cloud, a kind of something that comes from outer space and starts possessing people in rural Texas and turns them into blood-sucking zombies. But they are very much alert and verbose zombies. They're holding full conversation. This is a spoof. This is a horror spoof, kind of ahead of its time. It has like fourth wall breaking moments where the characters will look out of the screen at you. It'll have characters commenting on how creepy the incidental music is, like, so they know something bad's gonna happen. It is wacky. It is weird. It is incredibly ambitious. There are these crowd shots where it seems like they took over an entire Texas town in order to film it. They shot on weekends. It is charming AF. This is Bloodsuckers from Outer Space. It doesn't 100% work, but it's quick. It's 82 minutes. Everything about it, the location shooting, this kind of exploration of Texas, this kind of young man's feel the movie has, because it's very anti-establishment, very much like the kind of conservative rural types that the writer-director seems to kind of take umbrage with are the things that he's skewering in here, along with kind of horror movie cliches. It is a lot of fun. It is a movie that it feels very much like it would get the I'm unsure if he's ever talked about it, but it feels very much like it would get the Joe Bob Briggs seal of approval. This is a fun movie. It's barely a zombie movie because the zombies themselves are so kind of goofy and talkative. It does have government cover-ups. It does have a good chainsaw scene. It's weird and funny and clunky, and it's got moxie. But Bloodsuckers from Outer Space, a movie I'd never heard of until Vinegar Syndrome put out this gorgeous Blu-ray of it. But it's a lot of fun. All right, now we're getting into the real good stuff, the real deep cuts, the real weirdos. Dear Dead Delilah. I had heard of this. I knew that it is the lone directorial effort of John Ferris, the novelist who wrote The Fury and a bunch of other books in the 70s and 80s that were big hits. These were hit books. They did well, and he made this one feature film, and it is this great kind of Southern Gothic soap opera. There's so much family drama in this movie about a woman who commits an axe murder in the pre-credit sequence. She gets we flash forward to the present day where she gets released, and then through happenstance it ends up at this house where a patriarch has died, and he's left his money and he's hidden his money, and all of his money-grubbing relatives are there to kind of try and find out who has the money, where the money is, and she's mixed up in this weird melodrama. But the horror elements for the first 2/3 of the movie are very kind of sedate, but once you have this almost pseudo slasher start tearing up the family, and it's implied that it might be, you know, our protagonist who's been released from a mental home, but even she's not sure if it is. But there's some wild kills. One that I never ever pause movies and never like rewind them while I'm watching them for the first time. But there was one scene, like the second to last kill, that was just so wacky and so crazy. And involves like a horse at full gallop that I rewound it, and I was like, how did they even do this? This is a crazy stunt, crazy gore gag. But it's I'm not spoiling anything by telling you that, but the movie is kind of patience testing for a little while. It is well written and well acted. The world missed out on John Ferris, the director, and kind of just has John Ferris, the novelist, but will always have Dear Dead Delilah. And look at this alternate poster art. It's so cool. I would love to have one of these. So cool. The last movie we're going to talk about is far and away my favorite discovery. I think the best movie in this video. Kind of one of these best horror movies you haven't seen, kind of clickbait worthiness. It's called Body Melt, and you've probably heard of Body Melt. You've probably even seen the kind of the VHS cover, which isn't this, but they've got this wonderful die-cut slipcase. This is a film from the early 90s. It's 1993, Australia, and you think body horror, gore films, Australia, New Zealand, you think early Peter Jackson, and this is like, I guess, a year or two after Dead Alive, but it's not that kind of splatchstick. Even though it does have comedy, even though it does have gore and prosthetic elements to it, it's very much its own thing. Director Philip Brophy is kind of a, I would almost say like an Australian Joe Lansdale. He seems very preoccupied with taking these genre elements and remixing them in unexpected ways, and then making them almost kind of smarter than the movie he's making in some ways. It's a movie that started out as being pitched as an anthology. It was going to be 4 separate stories. It's based on 4 stories from Philip Brophy, and because of the way like the producers were giving them money, because of the way the Australian government was giving them money, and this is all covered on the special features in here, which are very, very extensive. I haven't even watched all of them yet. I just watched some of them. But they took this kind of mass of anthology stories and kind of smushed them all together. And then another film that did this really well is Blood on Satan's Claw. So even though the movies have nothing to do with each other, they both kind of started out as anthologies that were smushed all together, and it has this great quality to it. Ostensibly, it's about this healthcare company, this health spa company that's beginning to release this new line of vitamins. They're kind of these designer drug vitamins that unlock human potential and make you smarter and stronger and sexier, but they definitely are not FDA approved and definitely have some weird, gross, terrible side effects that the company knows about, and they're kind of using in like a corporate espionage way to experiment on all these people in a cul-de-sac. It's wild, it's crazy. It has maybe the only instance of a zombie monstrous placenta that I've ever seen in a film. It is really great. It's really like every 10 minutes in this movie I was like, how the hell have I never seen this movie? How are people not talking about Body Melt? And I think part of the reason why is because the VHS and the DVD releases of it were really kind of quiet and understated, and maybe it was a little bit of a cult movie within cult movie circles. But now that it has this really nice release, the movie looks great. It's 1993 and it's all practical effects, and it's got this nice widescreen look to it. Very processed, very like got that kind of 90s like sheen of the style of like glass and concrete, and then you juxtapose it with like some scene set in the Australian outback where these really nicely art directed and set designed, almost like Texas Chainsaw type family that works into this main story in like a really weird way. Body Melt is just awesome. It's really good. If you've seen this movie and you like it like I do, back me up in the comments, because it's awesome. Like if you were gonna pick up any of the movies I talked about today, Body Melt would be the one that I say that's a must get. They're all good. I enjoyed all of them to varying degrees, but Body Melt was just knocked my socks off. I'm probably gonna rewatch it pretty soon. For this week's book recommendation, I'm gonna double dip. I'm gonna talk about a book that I've talked about before, but I talked about it in like my second or third video. Like no one watched that, so no one knows. It's called Regional Horror Films, 1958 to 1990. It's by Brian Albright. It's kind of like a textbook, coffee table book kind of thing. I know the paperback's really expensive, so I recommend you get the Kindle version. It's just as good, but it's a state-by-state guide with interviews is what it's called. So it's broken up. It's kind of got a reference book feel to it, like where the back is all caps or reviews, and a lot of the movies we've talked about he talked about, but the interviews are fascinating. It's basically this like idea of movies made outside of Hollywood. That's the unifying factor from 1958 to 1990. Movies made in America outside of Hollywood, and how they came about, how the filmmakers kind of got their crews together and made these films, and how idiosyncratic and cool they are. But a really nice companion piece, especially if you're interested in the kind of stuff that we talk about on this channel. Brian Albright, very good. All right, I've talked your ear off long enough. I'm Adam Caesar. This has been Project Black T-shirt. I write books, and sometimes comic books, and short stories, and novellas. And if you'd like to receive a free sample of my work, if you'd like to check out my books before you go, buy the, say the audiobook of Exponential, which just came out, or the audiobook of Video Night that's doing really well. If you'd like a free sample, you can go to my website, links down below. Join my mailing list, and I'll send you out a free novel sample, a couple free short stories. It's a good time to be had by all. I'll see you next week, where I'll probably continue talking about horror books and horror movies. We'll see how it goes.